Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. President Biden speaks on Hurricane Ian today, what he says about the storm and the federal response. NTD's Iris Tao has more.
Oh man, it's washing it away. Look at that.
As Ian hits more parts of the East Coast after causing catastrophic damage in Florida, President Biden says this about its aftermath.
We're just beginning to see the scale of that destruction. It's likely to rank among the worst of the nation's and the worst in the nation's history. It's going to take months, years to rebuild.
Addressing the nation from the White House on Friday, the president says Americans' hearts are with devastated Floridians.
It's not just a crisis for Florida. This is an American crisis.
Biden says he's giving more federal funding to Florida, adding that the largest search and rescue team in recent history has been deployed.
Because so many of the rescuers need to take place now, need to be there in place now, in the water now.
And in addition to dealing with the storm's aftermath, the administration also vows to prepare for damage elsewhere. Biden on Thursday night issued an emergency declaration for South Carolina ahead of expected landfall. They'll give the state immediate federal funding for sheltering people and providing other support.
My message to the people of South Carolina is simple. Please listen to all the warnings and directions from local officials.
And Biden calling for unity in times like these.
Americans come together. They put aside politics. They put aside division. And we come together to help each other.
Reporting in Washington, D.C., Iris Tao, NTD News.
And in that same speech, President Biden responds to Russian President Vladimir Putin's move this morning to annex parts of Ukraine. Biden says the U.S. will defend every inch of NATO territory and will not be intimidated by Putin's threats. A government shutdown is averted after Congress passed a temporary funding bill to keep federal agencies open through December 16th. But House Republicans today put up a fight against the temporary funding bill.
We should not fund a government that is allowing an invasion across our southern border.
Included in the necessary funding bill is $12 billion for Ukraine and $19 billion for FEMA for disaster relief. Another $1 billion is to help low-income Americans pay for rising heating and cooling costs. Most all Republicans voted no on it. Many wanted to extend the expiration date until January to allow Republicans to have more control over the 2023 budget if the GOP takes back power in Congress. 10 bucked party leadership and voted with Democrats to pass the funding bill. Lawmakers have left town until November without making good on their promise to vote on banning stock trading. Leaders of the Democrat-controlled Congress previously promised a vote that would happen before they left today, but later dropped their plans to hold that vote. Now one lawmaker is lashing out against her own party's leaders for dropping the ball. Here's NTD's Melina Wisecup with more details.
House leadership said they'd vote on a bill this week to ban lawmakers from trading stock, but leadership has punted that vote just ahead of them leaving D.C. for over a month, and they haven't given a specific date as to when they'll take up this bill in the future. Now, the fact that leadership has delayed a vote on this has drawn backlash from a Democrat member in Congress, Representative Spanberger. She's now calling for new leadership. Spanberger said in a statement this morning, "This moment marks a failure of House leadership, and it's yet another example of why I believe that the Democratic Party needs new leaders in the halls of Capitol Hill, as I have long made known." So how is leadership responding to this criticism? Here's House Speaker Nancy Pelosi earlier today.
Well, we have to have the votes to bring it up.
You don't think you have the votes?
Well, we'll see. We'll work to have the vote. We don't go from one day to the next.
House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer says he delayed the vote on this because the text was just released on Tuesday and members did not have enough time to review it. But Representative Spanberger is not convinced, saying that this bill was designed to fail, saying that this is a kitchen sink bill and it's not a genuine effort on the part of House leadership to prevent financial conflicts of interest among lawmakers. She says that pretty much they're trying to create the illusion here that House leadership is pursuing this path while not taking any concrete action on it. And House Speaker Pelosi today did not say when leadership would bring this issue up again or if they even would at all once lawmakers do come back in November. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
OpenTheBooks.com is a government watchdog keeping tabs on a variety of people and entities in the United States government via Freedom of Information Act requests, otherwise known as FOIA requests. Their latest project involved tracking financial information tied to the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Dr. Anthony Fauci. Founder and CEO of OpenTheBooks.com, Adam Andrzejewski, joins us to discuss. Adam Andrzejewski, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me on.
Adam, OpenTheBooks.com has yet again done some digging through Freedom of Information requests, this time pertaining to Dr. Anthony Fauci. Tell us what you found.
While millions of Americans were suffering under Fauci's pandemic policies, we found that Dr. Fauci personally did very well. In fact, his personal investment portfolio soared and his net worth soared, as did his income and other outside income opportunities during the pandemic. So his net worth went from $7.6 million on January 1st of 2019 all the way up to $12.6 million at the end of 2021. It was a $5 million increase to his net worth.
It sounds substantial. From your research and experience, is this a special case compared to other government officials?
Well, I think so. I mean, what other government official has a cash investment portfolio of $12.6 million? There was essentially three drivers to his soaring net worth. Number one, his federal employment alongside that of his wife. Here's what the record shows. Dr. Fauci out-earns the president. Mrs. Fauci, Christine Grady, she's the chief bioethicist at Fauci's employer, the National Institutes of Health. She out-earned the vice president. If you take both of their salaries, add them together, and tack on 30% for the cost of federal benefits, at taxpayer cost every year, this power couple cleans off more than $900,000. The second driver was Fauci's outside income and the big cash prizes that he collected. He gets at least $100,000 by editing a medical journal from the book publisher McGraw-Hill. But that paled in comparison to the over $919,000 that he collected on large cash prizes. The third driver was his unrealized investment gains from that massive cash portfolio that he owns. So he had almost between $900,000 and $1 million of gains on that portfolio just last year.
Wow, it's incredible stuff. Just switching gears just a slight bit here. We've seen elected officials or their spouses making some significant trades in the stock market before significant legislation passes. Is this a concerning trend to you?
In terms of the investment portfolio, what our auditors found was that Dr. Fauci and his wife, they're invested in a broad array of mutual funds in the stock market, mutual funds in the bond market. They're not owning individual issues. So there's a difference there between Fauci's investments and investigations into members of Congress. Fauci, on this basis, on his disclosed portfolio, he's playing it clean.
What other projects do you have going on? Anything you'd like to share with us that's on the horizon?
So at OpenTheBooks.com, we took Governor Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, his campaign donor disclosures versus the state vendor list. And we found he solicited 1,000 state vendors for over $10.6 million worth of campaign cash. Those vendors just last year in state payments received $6.2 billion.
Always fascinating to speak with you. Adam Andrzejewski, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The White House has come up with their estimate of the cost of canceling federal student loans. They say it will cost $379 billion in total, or $30 billion per year over the next decade. This estimate roughly aligns with an analysis last week by the Congressional Budget Office. They put the cost at $400 billion. But the plan to cancel student debt is facing continued backlash. On Thursday, 6 states sued President Biden and the Education Secretary over the plan. These states say the plan to cancel student debt is an unlawful and arbitrary action. On that same day, the Education Department changed its guidance and scaled back eligibility for the plan. Now, if someone has student loans held by private lenders that are not yet consolidated federally, they're not eligible for the debt relief. An administration official says the change will impact around 770,000 people. Lawmakers passed a bill that exposes the Chinese Communist regime's persecution and propaganda tactics that target people of faith.
The Chinese Communist Party is waging war against all faiths: Christians, Falun Gong, Tibetan Buddhists, Muslims, the Uyghurs.
The bill, called Combating the Persecution of Christians in China Act, sheds light on the regime's efforts to suppress freedom of faith in China. It specifically notes that the Chinese regime proactively works to undermine religions through raiding churches, forcing churches to replace images of Jesus Christ or the Virgin Mary with pictures of President Xi Jinping. Furthermore, China is rewriting the Bible to issue a new version with the, quote, correct understanding that accords with the Chinese Communist Party. The bill also points out the Chinese regime's propaganda tactics to target and suppress people of faith. The bill reads, quote, according to the Department of State's International Religious Freedom reports, the Chinese government has imprisoned thousands of individuals of all faiths for practicing their religious beliefs and often labels them as cults. This type of propaganda has been one of the CCP's main tactics, though unsuccessful, to try to silence and suppress practitioners of Falun Gong, a spiritual practice rooted in the belief of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.